Morning. District 3 Commissioner and President of the Board. This is a special meeting of the Jefferson County PUD Board of Commissioners for Tuesday, January 12th, 2021. It's 10 a.m. Per the Governor's Extended Proclamation 2028, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Jefferson County PUD is no longer providing an in-person room for meetings of the BOC. All meetings will be held remotely via WebEx until otherwise informed by the Governor. Participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. If you are calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute. I would also ask today if we could, if you're not presenting or sharing your screen, or if you need to raise your hand to be recognized to speak, turn your cameras off if you would, please. We'll try that and see if that helps our overall WebEx connection. And with that, I will ask for commissioner introductions to determine a quorum.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner District 2.
Jeff Randall, Commissioner District 1.
Have a quorum. First item here is the review of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections?
I have none.
I have none.
No, we don't have any.
So with that, I would entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
So I assume I heard Ken. Did Ken vote?
Yes.
With that, the agenda is accepted. Item 3 is presentations. The first item is 3.1, PUD data dashboard tools for Moss Adams. Kevin, do you want to do some introductions or you just want to let them go right to it?
Aaron is going to present an updated version of some of the materials we went over last time. Because this is a budget review, and in the future, a lot of our budget information will be presented through dashboards. We felt it was an appropriate time to give you an update. With that, Aaron, jump in and show them some of your cool stuff.
All right, thank you very much. I see Ethan is presenter, so Ethan, can you show the dashboards, please? So what we've done over the last month is kind of move off of just that proof of concept and into our first min viable product. And we have 2 of the advanced dashboard elements installed and ready to go. Now we're running sample data, and we did take the advice well of looking at ways to limit the data that's being entered into the system. And in this case, it's all finance data. There is no customer level or public level data in this particular dashboard, but haven't finished stylizing it or coloring it yet, but this is expense and revenue tabs. So 2 tabs of the total of 7 that'll eventually be built for the income statement, balance sheet, journal entries, et cetera, et cetera. Ethan, would you like to give him a tour of your handiwork?
Yeah. So breaking this down, the first visual we have is this annual operating expenses trend. And we've broken it up by the year and by the account that it's referencing as well. And you can see in this tool, is everyone able to see this well? I can try to adjust the size if not. I'm assuming everyone.
You might try to make it a little bit bigger if you can, just to make it a little bit easier for everybody to see on the computer.
We'll go up a little bit. There we go. We'll try it there. I think that's the limits of my screen. This first visual, though, is the annual operating expenses trend. And what we've done is broken it up by the GL amount over the years and also by account. The second visual we have is this expense breakdown by expense type. You can see that it's broken down by the months. The account is colored a different shade. We have a color legend here to show you which accounts it's referencing. And then if you hover over specific bars in the stacked bar graph, you can see the amount that each account is reporting for that selected month. We also have a monthly expense trend that is broken apart by year on the different lines that it's displaying. And then the x-axis is still going to be the month that it's referencing. So you can see it's the month of June in year 2020, the month of May, year 2018, and you can filter by the different years. Moving on to the dashboard level filters. Up here, you can filter by the different utilities that we're trying to reference. You can filter by electricity, and that will adjust all the values in the different visuals to only reference the types of accounts that are associated with electricity.
So I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
I think this is exactly what I was hoping for, to be able to see the trends over a period of 5 years. But I'm wondering if you use different colors rather than shadings of the same color, the contrast, especially on the lower left corner graph, might be a lot easier to discern.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes, you are correct. So that's something that's very easy to adjust, and we can come to a consensus on what color schemes you want to use. For the purpose of this, I just used a random color palette just to illustrate the different accounts and years that it's referencing. But that's something that can definitely be changed in the future.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. I'll take that note down and I'll work with Kevin continually to refine these. And also, when we talked a little bit about the public board, if we're going to have boards that are available for public release, those don't necessarily have to be the same color scheme as everything else. So we can also look at ones that really enhance access for colorblind folks and stuff like that as we get closer to that release. Ethan, why don't you keep going and take a look at the other tab as well?
Yeah, I can. I'll just finish up here with just one other illustration of these filters. You can also select years to filter annually. So by adjusting this, you can get a different range of values, and that will affect the entire dashboard itself. Something else that we've added is this selecting between expense type or utility. And this breaks it down further into showing what utility is generating the most expense, or on this next tab, revenue. So the revenue is essentially the same layout as the expense statement. And so it's going to follow the same exact filter types with just different data uploaded to reference what it's referencing, which is revenue. And all these filters will work essentially the same way. You can still filter by utility, and it will affect every single visual in the graph to show you what the new average line is for monthly revenue trend. You can see in the tooltips what account this is referencing in the revenue breakdown, and you can see the exact amount of revenue within the tooltip as well. That is my basic general overview of the two dashboards. Aaron, if you want to add anything, feel free to.
Sure. Yeah, we have several others that'll even give entry, so those continue to get added, and we'll keep Mike and Kevin in the loop on that, and then we can also continue to work with Mike and Kevin on subcategories and other layers of filtering if there's additional kind of granularity that is desired. Because this is good, but it's, it's like some of the stuff is a little bit more aggregated than maybe desired. So we'll continue to work with them on that. And so far, so good. Things are coming along real nicely.
We are now. So this is a chance for the board. We think we're on the right track. So if the board has, a wish or, can give us some direction, otherwise we'll keep going on. We'll do these presentations where you may see something you really like or things you don't like, but we really think Aaron and his team are where we want them to be. We think the information is coming along. They're just doing a great job. So can I get a little input from the commissioners as to things you would maybe like to see or possibly something you don't want to see?
Commissioner Tupper. With what I'm seeing, it's a good, we got to start somewhere, and this looks like a good starting point. I think as we get more, input from the public, I think, and maybe even staff, that'll help us to, kind of determine what directions we want to go in with what granularity in particular. Thanks.
Yeah. Absolutely, sir.
And I'm pleased with what I'm seeing. This is very helpful. And I think the public will appreciate it as well.
Thank you, sir.
So this is Jeff Randall, and the financial information looks very interesting. I have a question for Kevin. When we're talking about dashboards, and I realize that Moss Adams is a financial institution, what are the thoughts about having some power outage information on the dashboard for the public? Kind of trends and where things are happening.
Work in progress as we speak. Aaron, I don't know where they are, but we sent him some kind of a wish list of not only OMS information, but some load information out of the substation. Today, we're really trying to do the financials and the budgetary stuff. I'm going to call it phase 2 will be outage and capital and all kinds of additional information be able to share in the same format.
Yep. That's absolutely correct. And we have started taking a look at some of that stuff. The mapping data seems to be pretty good, so we need to look at outage and start putting that together. But yeah, right now the focus is finance, plant, and KPIs, which are all kind of general ledger driven. And then the next phase is getting into customer and trouble ticket, stuff like that, service order management. But yeah, absolutely. We're going to continue to go through that process and working with Mike and Kevin, keep them appraised of the schedules. We do have a weekly check-in with them so that they're always up to date on where we're at.
Okay, I think outages are going to be really interesting to people, and where they sit in relation to others, and how we're doing over time. I think those are all really big indicators. So when you think about how to present the outage information, I've seen what we can do with our GIS, our mapping data. It's very sophisticated and complicated, and I don't know if there's a way to maybe create some like simple zones or something for our area of service where we just define certain areas and then provide updated information, kind of showing like a map and maybe breaking down the county in different colors, or I don't know. I'm just trying to think. I look at this and it's like, okay, this works for financial stuff, but for geography and outages, I think you need some sort of visual that shows the county, but I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see what you guys can do.
Absolutely, sir. Yeah, we didn't incorporate the customer data in this, but in the GIS into Tableau just fine. So we can do that, and we can take the customer information out of it. So we just have essentially the location. We can show all the like user endpoints without necessarily showing a user. And yeah, we can work with the staff to roll that up into something that makes sense. And I anticipate the public's probably going to have some feedback on that. So we'll leave some space in there to adjust it to a product that meets their needs as well.
Thank you.
So is there anything else from the commissioners? Kevin and I are really happy with the work that Moss Adams is doing. Aaron and his team's been doing great. We'll take back, work with them on the colors to make sure that it's easily distinguish between the different ones. I did get one little question was here, and Ethan, you might be able to answer this now. The revenue, can we do revenue by rate and class or meter size? You know, when you're looking at the revenues, is that something that we could look at is, you know, by the different revenue classes and that we have?
Yeah, and so I think that's the next step for me is to reach out to you guys to determine how that breakdown needs to occur, because that's something I've noticed going through these dashboards is breaking down by class and rate. There's multiple ways we can take that. So reconvening with you guys and making sure that we get that right before we start building those into these visuals is one of my priorities. So that can be done. Yeah, I'll be reaching out in the future to make sure that happens.
Okay. Is there anything else from the commissioners?
See, we have one person from the public, so I guess I would ask if there's any public input, 3 minutes if you want to chime in. Anybody? Will, you seeing anybody trying to mute or unmute or?
Not that I see.
Okay, great presentation, guys. I know this is a work in progress, and it looks like you got a little bit. You guys are doing on my end here. So, commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks very much.
So I just like to say thank you to. I just like to say thank you to Aaron, Ethan, and their other 2 team members. You know, you guys are doing a great job. We appreciate everything you're doing for us, and Kevin and I are both really excited about this whole thing. So, thank you guys for taking the time today to give an update to our board and to the public as to where we were at on everything. So, great job. We like them.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. It's great presenting to all of you.
Well, it's back to you, Kevin. Any on the dashboards before we move on?
No, it'll be a work in progress. We'll keep the board informed of where we are, and the input is very well appreciated. Thank you. And we'll move on to the next part of our meeting if everyone's ready.
Yep,
All right. Thank
so
you guys.
we're going to move on to item 2, the 2020 and 2021 PUD budget review.
So I'll start out. This meeting's a little bit different for our PUD. It's not different to where I would like to see us go. So what we're going to do in this meeting is in this presentation, we're going to show you where we are today. And this should be done yearly. We haven't done it in the past, but this is going to say, okay, in January, this is how much money we have in the bank. This is what we're going to spend in 2021. And then set up the meetings we're going to be doing in our next meeting is scheduled for March. And every 2 months throughout the year, we will do a financial update. And that will be based on this meeting we start today and the information that we are going to present. Now, this is a little bit different presentation. These budget meetings aren't going to show a whole lot of what happened in past years, but it will be a snapshot in time where we are in this year's current budget. So it has a little different slant and meaning to it, but it's something that the board and staff, I'm hoping, gets used to seeing, okay, not only do we have money in the bank, but this is what we spent, this is what it was spent on, these are the revenues. Because hopefully, in a short time, people become accustomed to how much money comes in every month, how much we spend every month, what drives our spending. this time of year, it's outages or equipment failures, stuff like that. So this presentation's a little bit different. I hope it comes over as we want it to. And then there'll be a lot of discussion at the very end of this presentation on how we believe things should move forward. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike. He and I will kind of tag team. He will start the presentation and we'll just go through it. If you have questions, please interrupt us and we'll address the questions as we come to them. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, so we're just going to give you an update, kind of where we are looking at the end of 2020 and just kind of look at, going into 2021. So just some highlights of what happened in 2020, just to kind of remind everybody. We did close our offices in March. We started working remotely. We got this pandemic going on. Those are all things that affected the budget, in multiple different ways and had different effects on it. So those are just some things to keep in mind as we look at the 2020 numbers, is that we did have some out of our control items that hit it, that affected the budget. I guess everybody can see the presentation, okay?
I can see it.
Okay. So just wanted to kind of give some keynotes here as we look at the 2020 data. These financial data for 2020, they're rough numbers. We're still in the process of completing the December month end. So numbers are going to change. They're unaudited. But these numbers are kind of as of where we were last night. So numbers will change. They're not final yet. As we look at all these numbers, some are final, some will still change over time, over the next couple of days and weeks. So just as a kind of a reminder, this is where we're at on revenues. These aren't going to change too much. We're right. We did actually really good. We're about $500,000 combined under budget, but we're within that what we planned. Revenues we're 5,000. Excuse me, I said that backwards. I looked at the wrong columns. We're about $500,000 over budget on our combined revenues. Water, electric revenues were higher. We started out this year slow. January, we were behind. We've made it up over the year. And even water, they're almost right on budget on their revenues. So as far as revenues, we look really good for 2020 on those. Looking at our total cost, these numbers will change because we are still in the process of applying expenses to 2020, and we haven't ran everything. So right now, looks like we're still I think we're going to end up pretty close to budget, maybe over a little bit. Kind of just depends on how everything comes to the end here, but we'll be fairly close to budget for both electric and water than the combined utilities. We'll know more as we go through the next week or so as we finish up the 2020 information. And so now we're looking at our total margins. These are, how much money we're putting back into the bank. These numbers will change because we are doing the expenses. We're not going to end up with $4.6 million for the electric revenue, and water right now we're losing $161,000, almost $162,000. That one could go either way. We're probably going to end up losing a little bit more money on it as we go through the finished processing, but that's about where we're looking at right now on it. So we're just kind of giving everybody an update and kind of an idea of where we're at right now on our 2020 numbers.
So, Mike, would
Yes.
this be a place to be for a little bit when you're talking about the margins, or no?
Can that wait till we get to the key ratio slide?
Yeah, I got one more slide. I got a slide down here in a little bit, Dan, and then we'll address that.
Okay,
Question.
no, that's good. I didn't know what your timing was.
So then the next thing we're just kind of wanted to show you kind of where we're projecting our, unrestricted cash. We're showing you what was included in the budget.
Mike, can you make that a little bit larger? Maybe not have the next slide in the screen as well?
I didn't realize that. Yeah, let me see what I can figure out here. Just a second.
Thank you. Perfect.
Okay. Sorry, it was showing up on my computer as one thing and the screen on the other thing, so I wasn't sure what everybody was seeing. So this is just, we're showing what August 2020 is what we included in the budget. The December 2020 is what we are showing right now. There is about $1.8 million that difference, that we're less. And that's just the way expenses came through. We had a few more expenses come through that, we weren't really planning on. So we ended up spending a little bit more money finishing up 2020 than what we were predicting in August. So that, our unrestricted cash in 2021 that we're predicting right now, is down to 6.7, but, that's just a prediction right now. As we go through the year, that number will change and fluctuate, and we'll be able to update it as we go through.
Hey, Mike, I have a question.
Yeah.
So the net cash outflow, isn't that primarily because of our decision to pay for the office building with cash? Would you say that that's the big reason this number is the number it is compared to, say, other years?
Yeah, that's, that is a lot of where we are spending the money at. We have spent, I think it's about $3 million plus so far in 2020 on that building. So we've taken quite a bit out of our reserves to, complete the building. We got a little bit more coming out in 2021 as we finish up the building. But those are, we've got those big expenses that's a big expense that we don't have year to year. So, once we have that completed, we'll be able to start building that cash back up some because we won't have that big expense.
Well, Mike, you used the term reserves right there. Maybe we touch on that real quick. How are we looking with the reserves as it relates to aligning with the finance policy that we adopted this year?
We still are within, because the line of credit does qualify us, does count as part of our 90-day cash reserves. We're still right in line. As you can see, right now we have 9.3 in the bank at the end of 2020, plus the $5 million line of credit. So we're right in line with what we should be for our cash reserves, actually a little bit higher when you look at both the cash in the bank and the line of credit. We'll have to watch 2021, but there again, we don't know how cash is going to come in 2021. That one we'll have to, as we go through these budget meetings, we'll be able to update you better on where we're at on our cash reserves and things like that. So then the next one is just I got to go back to the other one just a second here. Okay, so the next one is just our restricted cash summary. This just wanted to kind of show you where we are at. We've increased our restricted cash. These are cash accounts that are set up because of LUDs, bonds, that we have. There's some that we have to keep money in, based on our covenants with the bonds and with the loan documents
One thing I will mention here, in February on this restricted cash, we are going to come to the board and move some of this restricted cash, or we're going to make a recommendation to move some of the restricted cash from restricted into the other account where it's unrestricted. There's reasons for this. We've been working with Moss Adams and Joel. We had a meeting yesterday. This will come forward within hopefully either the first or second meeting in February. And some of this restricted money that has been paid out of general funds will be moved back into the general fund accounts. So that will update this sheet, and it will also change and increase our unrestricted cash money. But that is a work in progress. We've talked to the board about it before, but we are in a position to move that forward within the next month.
So now we're just talking about, we got 4 key ratios that are reported each month on our financials, and just kind of wanted to go over them a little bit here. We do use the TIR ratio, the times interest earned ratio. That's on our electric side only. Our debt service coverage, we only report it on the electric side. Some of our water covenants have it. It's not figured as strictly. It's also more of a cash type debt service coverage, not a ratio. Our equity ratio and our long-term debt to plant ratio. The TIR, that just says how many times we can pay the interest with our margins. Debt service coverage is how we can pay what the ratio is that we could pay our principal and interest due on our loans. The equity ratio basically shows how much of our total plant that we actually own, and how much is borrowed or paid with debt. And then the long-term debt to plant ratio is kind of the same thing. It just shows, how much of our long-term debt is tied still to our plant. So with our RUS loan, we do have a TIR requirement and a debt service coverage requirement. The TIR is at 1.11, I think, or 1.1. Oh, okay. I had those wrong. TIR is 1.25 and debt service is 1.1. So those are, and it's actually, they look at the best 2 years out of the last 3 years. So it's at whatever, when we turn in our RUS Form 7, they figure the TIR based on that information. Dan, did that kind of answer your question?
Well, I was going to kind of ask you maybe to give your view on the trajectories, after finishing 2020 and what we're projecting for 2021, what kind of trajectory are we looking at, in your opinion?
I haven't figured the TIR ratio. I mean, I know I figured it when we did the budget. We were still looking at 1 point, and we were looking at the high 1, almost 2. We did make a change this year after the budget was approved. We used to record non-cash contribution and aid trenching and conduit that was basically provided by customers, but there's a WAC. I don't remember the exact number right offhand. And I checked with a couple with Mason 3 and Clallam County. We don't have to record that. There was no cash in the bank. It didn't affect anything. All it did was it increased our non-operating margins, which increased our total margins. And there was no cash involved. So we're not recording that. We put that in October. We're not recording that anymore. So that will affect our TIR a little bit, just because but it's going to give us a more actual TIR and not an inflated TIR based on non-cash, on an arbitrary number. But I haven't actually figured the tier, the year-end tier for 2020 or looking at 2021 again.
Yeah, it'd be nice to kind of know what, because I know we were in the high twos or maybe low threes, 2 years ago, if I remember, and now we're down to around two. That's a downward trajectory. So I just was curious if we're flattening off or if we're going to continue on that downward trend.
Well, a lot of those, the tier, it depends on how much revenues come in, how would your expenses come. So it's, well, yeah, we can do it, kind of show the trend, but, year to year, it's going to change where we're at and how it's going. So, but we can kind of put something together to be able to show you, Dan, and to show the commissioners.
Yeah, thank you.
And one thing I would like to point out on tier, we do provide it monthly, but it really, there's a lot of variance month to month. What you're looking at for our US standards is what you turn in on your Form 7, your year end. So some months were real high, you'll notice, some months were real low. It is a December to December time frame that is given to RUS on our Form 7, and that is a more stable number. But as our expenses go up, our tier goes down. And so there is, there's some correlations between rates, tiers, expenses. So, we are in the rate study, and that is all part of what is put together for tier.
Is there any other questions on how 2020 is looking and shaping up before we move on? Because now we're going to start moving into some of the 2021 highlights and some of how these meetings are going to go forward. Okay, we're going to go ahead and just jump in here. Oops. As soon as I get all the right screens up to the right thing. So just wanted to give some highlights of what we're looking at for 2021. We're going to, still continue doing our remote working. Eventually, we'll have a few more people in the office as the building construction's completed. One of my areas for my team is we're going to just work on improving our processes, implementing things to just make the flow of information better, make our processes more efficient. So that's one thing that finance is working on that we're through 2021. So the next thing is just wanted to give you a little bit of a highlight of the budget that was approved back in October. Our revenues for electric are 37.5 million, water's just under 2.7. So combined, we're looking around just over $40 million in revenues. Our total cost of service, all of our expenses, depreciation, everything like that. We're looking at just under 38.7 for electric, a little over 3.9 million for water. So we're looking about $42.6 million total. Our non-operating margins, we're looking about 2.7, almost 2.8 for electric, 855,000 for water. So total is $3.6 million. And our total margins, how much money, we're going to put back into the bank, that we're going to make at the end of the year. We're looking about just under 1.6 for electric. We're losing about 400,000 on water. So altogether, we're just under 1.2 million. And then the bottom there is just kind of showing how those numbers come together. You take your operating revenues minus your cost of service, your total cost of service, plus your non-operating margins to get your total margins. So just next thing is just wanted to kind of go over the capital budget again, just kind of, the capital dollars represent the reinvestment into our infrastructure. So this is the money that we're putting back in to the utility, to improve the poles, the wires, the water pipes, the facilities, just overall the infrastructure, the plant that we own. So we have, about 2.9 million for electric projects, about 609,000 of the water projects. That's money that we're paying for. We got some that we're trying to get loans for that we're going to do based on the availability and proceeding with loans for the water projects. We got the 675,000 for broadband and fiber, more broadband than actual fiber. We got about $1.6 million still left for the facilities improvements. That's part of the construction and just kind of finalizing things with the building. We have about 455,000 for new fleet. This is just to kind of keep our aging fleet abreast, keep trucks rolling so we can continue to respond to outages, to maintenance, to new construction. We have about 131,000 in warehouse and yard improvements. This is more on the electric side of things. Just there again, it helps the flow of material, getting people in and out of the warehouse and the yard in a more efficient way. We got about $90,000 for some electric tools and some personal protection equipment. These are high dollar. These are over $5,000 on an individual basis, not just little tools or anything. We have about $25,000 for IT. A lot of that's going towards the building, getting everything set up and making sure we can use the building when we get back into it. And then we have $155,000 in contracted engineering costs. This is just us using outside engineering firms to help with projects that either we can't do in-house for certain reasons, or we need an outside service to sign off on something.
Hold on. Now, here's where some of our meetings are going to change in the future. In the past, we've all had a electric work plan budget. I'm going to say 2.9 million, but we didn't show you monthly how much work we were doing and those numbers going down. So moving forward in the next meetings and meetings after that, you'll be able to say, okay, we budgeted 2.9 for electrical. We've accomplished 500,000. So we have a total of 200 or 2,400,000 left. Same thing with the water plant. So what the goal is, not only for the BOC, but for staff to be able to break these numbers down and actually watch the budget either stay in budget or go out of budget. So these are the things that at least I believe we need to do a better job in tracking the numbers closer than waiting till the end of the year to say, yeah, we're on budget or we're not on budget. Because in a lot of the stuff we get, the expenses we do a better job on showing than we do the capital. And the capital has a big impact in our dollars left in the bank. So this is one place where we will change a little bit of the information coming forward to the BOC and to staff. So it's not just a small handful of people looking at these numbers. It would be looked at on a high cursory level through the board. So this is one thing that will change as we move forward.
This is Commissioner Tupper. So on the facilities improvement number, how much of that is the completion of the actual building at 310?
Almost all of that, Dan.
So the question on that is, where's that going to put us at overall meeting budget on that project?
We can bring Don in. I think we are still going to be within budget, but it'll be very close, or we may be a pinch over budget based on some overruns in some unforeseen areas that the remodels, stuff like that. We have some issues that have had to been addressed that have actually cost us a little more than what was budgeted. But until you get in, we didn't know. So, Don, do you want to jump in?
Sure. So the things that are going to affect this budget over what we actually budgeted for on this project will be things like oversight and administrative costs associated with COVID delays, some additional site work we had to do, some redesign of the roof, but also we found some damage and problems with the existing roof that we're going to have to address. So that's going to be additional. And some changes to site work that we needed to do as we dug into the ground and found some things we needed to fix. So all that being said, we could very well be a pinch over budget. We'll just have to wait and see. Everybody's working hard to try to stay as close as we can. But with the additional roof work that we're going to need to do, it's probably going to go over. Kevin.
And this is Jeff and Don. Those are decisions we made kind of way back when too. Some of them, like the roof stuff. I mean, we saw those kind of getting close to final designs, or I can't remember. Maybe it was still preliminary design of the architects, and it was some flat roof stuff and some equipment locations. So these were decisions we made a while ago. So I guess we knew there was going to be some extra costs. I mean, we had those shared with us when we gave that direction. So I think it's actually pretty remarkable that you guys have been able to stay as close to budget given all the crazy stuff that's been going on with this starting and stopping the project and everything else. So you guys deserve a ton of credit for keeping this thing basically between the white lines.
Well, thank you. I think, some of the things we didn't expect were some damage that we saw that had been occurring over time on the existing roof line, and things that we found in the ground, and some of the insidious delays we've been having because of COVID in terms of material and furniture, and which increases your overhead and administrative costs as well. So, but we're pressing hard. We'll see how it goes here, but we'll do our best.
Okay. We'll move on to the next slide.
So Kevin's kind of already hinted at some of this stuff. So now we're just kind of giving you a quick overview of how Kevin and I kind of talking how we think these meetings are going to go, how some of the information is going to be presented. So this is kind of just a look forward to how the March meeting is going to look. We're going to show you the revenues, the total cost of service, the non-operating margins, the total margins. We're going to list the current month, which would be the current month is the last financial month that we gave to the board already. So you're going to see it, but we're going to be able to dive into it a little bit more. And then the year to date will be up to that last financial. So like when we do March, it may be just January, or it may be January and February, depending on when the meeting in March is at. So the current month could be, say, February. The year to date would be both months. I'll show you the year-to-date budget for January and February, and then just a reminder of what the annual budget is. So you can kind of start seeing how we're doing, how we're actually doing, plus how the budget's doing both year-to-date and as an annual budget. Just so we can kind of start correlating and relating those numbers back and forth together.
And I am used to, once we give you these numbers, there will also be some key numbers that really drive revenues or different things like that. So there will be a little bit of a breakdown as, for example, on revenues, we may say, okay, it was a little bit warmer, and we'll have some slides pertaining to this, but there will be some granular breakdowns to this that say, okay, this is why that number is this way, or why we budgeted it at 10 million and we're over by 2 million. So a lot of explanation will go into these numbers So you'll not only see the big number, but we will dig down and be able to show you some cause effects and anomalies that happen every month that we're used to seeing, but as a board and staff, we may not see it. It's if you watch our money in the bank, are basically what we have to spend, we get a RUS payment of 1.5 million, we get a BPA payment of 1.3 million. So in that month, we'll have a 3 million expense, drops our reserves down, but then we bring in additional revenues, which kind of cover those reserves. So those are the things we're hoping people start becoming accustomed to looking at, and it, like I say, more explanation of the numbers, not just a number. So
that actually kind of leads me into the next slide here of what part of what we were going to be doing, and that is our cause and effect. You know, for example, well, there's a cause. How does it affect our revenues? You know, cold months, our revenues increase. Hot months, you know, revenue goes down. You know, or it stays even, especially in, like, for example, January 2020. It was a warm month. Our revenues were $500,000 below budget. You know, but then April became a cold month. We went $400,000 above budget. You know, so that's part of what we're going to dive into is what are some cause and effects. The windstorms that we've been having the last 2-3 weekends, whatever seems like all we've been having for the last month, our expenses are increasing because we have guys working double time. They're working a lot of extra hours. We're having to bring in tree crews. You know, our expenses are going in. Next thing, you know, our infrastructure failures, you know, unknown outages, you know, transformers fail, cutouts fail. You know, how do they affect our financials? You know, how do the outages affect the budget? You know, it's not just outages, it's the weather, it's everything that's going on. So like Kevin was saying, yeah, these meetings are us diving into more of the cause and effect on the numbers, not just presenting numbers to the board. It's us talking about what those numbers mean, how they are, why we're maybe over budget, under budget, things like that we really want to bring forward to the board and start having those discussions with the board. We got one more here, kind of goes along with the same thing like Kevin was talking about earlier. And it's just our completed capital projects. You know, we're going to start showing, hey, we got these projects done in the last couple of months. And we'll also do some looking forward on capital projects, saying, here's some projects that in the next month or two that we're going to be working on. We're going to be spending money, but they may not be done for a while, but they're going to still take money to do over the next couple of months. So that's kind of what we're going to start showing, some more of the capital project costs that affect our cash in the bank and just affect how our reinvestment into our infrastructure.
And a lot of times we do talk about our capital projects, but we don't show the debit to the budget. And that becomes an important part of your total year-end budget at 2021 is, you know, we may have put off a capital project to make sure we ended 2021 in a better light, or we may say, no, this project has to be done, so we're going to complete it even though it debits what we should have in the bank. And I am going to say this is one place where we talk a lot about capital projects and what the work we are going to do, but we don't show it in the number format. We don't show that, okay, we have 2.9 million, we spent $500,000 on this project, we have 2.4 million left to spend. And that becomes important, not only for staff, but for the board and the public to look at the overall financial stability of the PUD. So we think these bi-monthly meetings are a necessity for moving things forward and keeping everybody on the same page. It's not just a select few of the directors at the PUD knowing what's going on, but we all know what goes on.
So, Commissioner Tupper, so what I would say too, is, after what you just said in the slide that's up here, this is maybe somewhat of a template as to what our dashboards, the kind of information we need to be putting into those dashboards so that we can review those dashboards before these type of meetings, because we don't always get your presentations until the 11th hour. So if you can kind of be somewhat intuitive with dashboards as you go ahead of putting pertinent information into those, it'll help us with these budget meetings. That might be helpful.
So Dan, for that, and this is some of the give and take we'd like to talk about. So when we submit a budget to the board for RUS, and we're going to start doing the same thing on the water projects, we tie it to what's called the 740C code. So a substation upgrade is in the 500 numbers. Transmission is in the 1200 numbers. So what we're going to do on the dashboards is we're going to take the 740C code that says underground, overhead to underground projects is this number. We'll tie all that together. That's how they do it for the RUS. So you will be able to see not only in our meetings, but you'll be able to see the 740C codes being dropped or not dropped, depending on the type of projects we're doing at the time. So that is part of our long-term plan. But even there, these bi-monthly meetings, at least at the start, will be an explanation of those numbers, what they mean, and the projects that we're doing that affects the numbers. So that is part of our overall goal with the dashboards, but that one takes a little bit more work, but it is crucial to understanding a complete budget of 2021.
And I just want to say that I appreciate the efforts made by staff to provide the commissioners with greater transparency.
Kevin, I have a question that it's not so much budget related, but it relates to how the organization works and how we're going to use the office building. And I don't know if this is still down the road a ways because it anticipates COVID being over or phasing out as we start getting people vaccinated and we can make decisions about bringing the workforce into a central place again. Is that something you have started to think about now, how the building would be used and what taking the lessons learned from people working at home and their productivity and how flexible we can be, or what maybe the desired mix of people in the office versus people at home is? I wonder if you could just maybe let us know a little bit about your thinking on that, about what we've learned. And if this is not the time, that's fine. But if you can share a little bit about with what we've learned and what your thoughts are going forward, or maybe if we don't know enough yet, when that discussion might occur.
So Melanie and I are working on how the new building will be used, who will be in it and when. And the email went out to the directors today on ideas on not only how it will be used, but where people sit, how things will happen. And as soon as maybe by the end of the week, should have something for the board and everyone to look at to say, okay, this is a starting point. We have learned that people are very productive from home. So for all of 2021, some people work from home. I think that is the wave of the future. I think from now on, some people will work from home. We do realize there's times they'll have to come to the office, but we'll have a space assigned for them. But in our building, a lot of it was an open concept where there was two people in a large cubicle. So our goal moving forward is staff would be in one side of the cubicle on Monday and a different person would be on the other side on Tuesday. They wouldn't be there together, but they would have a space that they could always come to, have their computer. And then on the off days, they'd work from home. So we are working in that direction. We have some things. I'm saying about 2 days, maybe a week away, depending on staff's time. If we get a lot of input back within a day or two, a small drawing, some explanation will go out to the board either end of this week or first of next week to start the process. But I will say this, Jeff, things change. We're not sure how it'll go, but we do have a plan for short term starting in March when we're going to hopefully be in the building.
Okay. Then I had one more question. This is more of a budget question, and it's not, I'm not looking for an exact answer. It's more of kind of how you feel. And I realize that any manager and anybody who's trying to keep the power on or the water on would have an unlimited list of projects where they want to spend money. That list would far exceed the money you have, whether it's fireproofing poles and replacing this and that. So I realize it's kind of a, where's the greatest need? You know, where's the greatest exposure to risk is where you end up spending money to fix things. So the question is, with this office project nearing completion, and that being, you know, one of the obvious things that was impacting the PUD with our people spread all over the place, and, you know, we just didn't have a long-term plan for functioning. We're going to have a long-term plan for addressing that. I guess the question is, do you feel like we're on a pretty good path to fix and upgrade things on both the water and the electric side over time, or is there some other big matzo ball out there that's like the Quilcene water tank or something, some big thing that's got exposure for us, and it's more of a feel? How do you feel about the rate of spending on capital projects and capital infrastructure versus the amount of money that we seem to be able to set aside per year?
So, first I'll start on the electric side, and then I'll go to water. On the electric side, we have some long-range plans that we're working on now. So, as staff, we understand, you know, we have a budget, we've got to stick to it. So, the things we do work on long-term, we understand it takes a long time to pay off to do some of these projects. We do them in phases. So on the electrical side, I'm very comfortable. We're moving in a very positive way. We've changed out a lot of bad infrastructure that we inherited, and we're being very proactive there, and we've spent money. On the water side, I can't say that. On the water side, we need to do a better job on setting some priorities. With Sam here, that has happened. We have, I think, turned around some of the sad to say it, but when we took over the electrical, some of the key infrastructure for water got left behind. I feel sorry for Sam. She does have many projects that have to be done, and I keep telling her she doesn't have any money to do them with, because that is a juggling act. But we are hoping with some of the state funds and some other options that we can fund the bigger projects. It'll be a long-term financing thing, but that's going to happen on the water side to bring us up to where we need to be. It's going to be a challenge, but with Samantha and some other staff, we can accomplish it. But we do need to do a better job on the water side.
Okay, and that's I really appreciate that, and that's a snapshot that's super helpful. And when we think about it, that's really the approach we took with the electric side. We borrowed a bunch of money, and, you know, the commissioners before me, and they borrowed several million extra because they knew that the infrastructure was going to require investment. So we had a long-term financing plan that really covered the electric side. And when we make some of these investments, they're investments that last 30, 40, 50 years on the water side too. So what I'm hearing you say is, and we see it in the budget numbers, we've got some deficits on the annual budget on the water side. There's going to be, little water matzo balls in there of expenses. And what you're saying is it's unrealistic to expect ratepayers today to jack up the rates enough to have the money to make these investments that are going to be lasting 30, 40, 50 years. So we need a long-term financing plan to cover these water improvements, that some of which we've inherited from private water companies or whatever, where they just weren't, or associations, they just weren't maybe built right in the first place, or they don't tie together right with things. And it's something we're going to be looking at. So we've had this approach of, we don't want to borrow more money, but this is an example for the water side where we're probably going to need to do it, but it'll get it on a sound footing. And then the rate increases can be much more modest because we can look at kind of a trajectory of rates over, 20, 30 years or whatever, and having a financing plan that injects the cash now to cover that work over time. So that's exactly what I was looking for. So thank you very much.
Any other questions? We're done a little bit early. Again, this is going to be a rotating meeting. In March, we'll have another one. When we hope to start bringing a lot of this together. A lot of it today was what we're going to do. Hopefully, at the next meeting, people will be able to see the vision and understand. Really, we're trying to share information in a little different way. And I believe it's going to be good for the BOC, for staff, and for the public to start to see, okay, we bring so much money in every month, we spend so much money every month. Those aren't just numbers. They are tied to something. And hopefully moving forward, it'll make sense.
I'd just like to add one thing, going back to what Dan's question was about the dashboards, that's really part of the whole reason we wanted the dashboards, is to supplement the, information, make it kind of give you both the numbers and a visual of what those numbers are. So that way you're not just reading numbers, you can kind of see the things, like, I know Ken likes the trends, you can see how over time that we, how we're doing, how we've done in the past, and, kind of help project where we're going in the future. So that's really, one of the goals of the dashboards, is just to supplement these meetings, but also the monthly financials that we include in the board packets. So, if there is something else the board would like to see, we're open to it, as we go through them, we're, like Kevin said, these are a work in progress. Next one, we'll kind of plan it how we think it should go. But if there's something particular the commissioners would like to see or like us to do, we're open to it. Just let us know. And hopefully that, these are beneficial to the directors, the staff that's on the meetings too, but also really for the commissioners and making sure that they, start understanding. I know, there's a lot that affects what we do and how we do it. So just want to be able to start sharing that information with everybody.
Thanks. So is there any public comment on this discussion item, on this review? Looks like we still have some public on the line. It's not like there's any public input at this point. Anything else from staff or commissioners on item 3.2? Not seeing any hands or hearing any voices. So I guess that concludes item 3.2.
You kind of cut out there, Dan. Yes, we're finished with our presentation. If there's no more questions, we can end the meeting.
So with that, I will ask, is there anything else for the good of the order today? Seeing, with that, it is 11:10 a.m. I will put us into adjournment. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.